Hey, welcome to the Big House Breakdown, all things college football with a focus on the Michigan Wolverines. So we are here today to talk about just that. We're here to talk about the outstanding win that the Michigan Wolverines had against the Wisconsin Badgers. Um, 24 to 10, as it were. And there are some really awesome, things to talk about. I'm not as down on everything as everyone else on the performance of the team. I am more up, and as you can see, I'm on the bright side. Now I know it doesn't look about it. I know it doesn't look that way based on my picture. I got my ice cube going in this picture, but this little animation picture that I have. But we are here today to talk about this. Our boys rolling 24 to 10 over a really good Wisconsin Badger team. Um, and let's not get it twisted. The Wisconsin Badgers are, the pride of college football. They're a blue blood school. You're going to always get your best, or they're going to turn their best into a mud and a rock fight. And essentially, that's what they did during the game. They turned it into a mud and a rock fight. They had some unconventional things going on. They had some third string quarterback things going on. They were flip flopping quarterbacks. They were doing a lot of interesting stuff that's not really conventional um, for, you know, for the game that is played on Saturdays called college football. And then when you do your scouting and then you turn around and see some unusual things that happen as a coaching staff, you have to adjust. So Michigan had to adjust. And then, we come out victorious. If you saw the preview show, the um, you knew the power index and the blue chip ratio of either team, um, and what that actually looked like. Michigan was way ahead of Wisconsin in that regard. I think it was 57% to 12%, and that usually would tell you where the talent is going to come from and how the games are going to play out talent wise. Now, we knew Michigan had an opportunity to blow them out and did not. And that's not really important. I mean, in some regards it is, but in other regards it's not. So Michigan beats Wisconsin 24 to 10. Michigan had 270 passing yards to Wisconsin's 177. Michigan rushes for almost 200 yards, 175. Wisconsin rushes for 75 yards. Anytime you can hold a Big Ten team to under 80 yards rushing, you did your job. Michigan had 445 total yards. Wisconsin had 250 total yards. Underwood, the Michigan quarterback, was 19 for 28 for 270 yards and a touchdown. Simmons for Wisconsin was 18 of 29 for 177 yards and a pick. So again, one more week for the freshman phenom Bryce Underwood to be interception free. And I think that's, really, showing dividends for his, growth and development. So rushing wise, Justice Haynes for Michigan Wolverines, another Heisman movement day, 19 carries, and only 19 carries. Could you imagine if he had 25 or close to 30 like they would give him Blake Corum? It'd be crazy. But he had 19 carries for 117 yards, two tutties, and a 43-yard long score, whereas Dylan Jones of Wisconsin had 17 attempts for 63 yards, not 100, but 63 yards, and the longest run of the day was only 16. Dupree, which is their backup running back, had 6 carries for 15 yards and got smacked by Brandon Hillman, the hit stick, the hit man, if you will, in the game. Bryce Underwood only rushed for 12 yards with a long of 7, and Samaj Morgan had a little end around, kind of east-west offensive output for about 2 yards. The receiving of the day, Donovan McCulley was the star of the day. 6 receptions, 112 yards, a touchdown, and a run of 30, and a passing play with a yak of 33 yards. And then you have Andrew Marsh, who went 4 for 80 with a 32-yard long pass play. Samaj Morgan went 5 for 44 for 19-yard, is the longest pass play. And then Marlon Klein had 2 for 15 with a 10-yard long pass play. Now, I have to say this. These wide receiver stats, we beat Wisconsin's wide receiver stats. So for a team like Wisconsin, who's built on being wide receiver friendly or wide receiver schemed, Michigan winds up beating their output at wide receiver because Vinny Anthony only had, as fleet of foot as he is, he had 97 yards, and got to tighten that up as a secondary. Mason had 30 yards, and Kahuna only had 20 yards, and I expected him to have a lot more because he's kind of like their third down person. So that's how that went down offensively on the day. Let's look at defense real quick. Rod Moore had a pick, and Derek Moore had a sack. And I believe there was almost 40 hurries on the day. Rod Moore closed it. The closer is back, y'all. The closer is back. And Derek Moore, Demo as they call him, like Demo, he just gets better and better and better. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man, we're going to keep rocking on this subject matter because we are talking about this. And that was your box score. You know what I'm saying? You had great outputs from players like Ernest Hausman on Michigan with 9 tackles and a pass breakup. You had a bunch of pass breakups from Zeke Berry, although I'd like for him and Jair Hill to tighten up that technique so they're not so grabby. But let's go through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's get that up. The good, the bad, and the ugly of the score. The bad. Well, it's aspects of Michigan's O-line play. So you got Sprague and Crippen. Now, Sprague is a first-year starter. Last year, he started in the bowl season and toward the end of the year. Had some solid play. That's not characteristic of him. So I'm sure once we get back and we fine-tune what we want to do, and we look at the tape and they get graded and they get corrected, I'm sure Sprague has an ability to correct that. Now, Crippen, on the other hand, I think he's a good center. I think he has a very cerebral mind for the game, calling out Robert Joker Ritter and pass protection sets for the O-line. I just see him struggling from time to time against a really stout offensive line. And that's kind of how that went. But it wasn't anything that negated the day. And sometimes when you're an offensive center and you have to adjust to, aspects of playing against a really stout D-line, things like snaps and sacks and getting pressure up the middle can kind of go awry a bit. Nothing that's not correctable between him and Jake Guarnera and the left guard. I just think that once we get Giovanni Ohadi back, that will shore up a lot of inside leakage. And then, of course, Sprague has to get proper footing so he's not getting outflanked by, 5 techniques and 7 techniques. Yeah, man, because we got to protect the franchise. Our pass pro must be refined so we could protect Bryce Underwood. He is doing so great despite, his receivers not really helping him very much except for McCulley. And now that Marsh has joined in with McCulley, we look like we have a semblance of a passing offense. So once again, aspects of the bad. aspects of our corner play. Zeke Berry and Jair Hill. So as much as I love watching those dudes play, I think they're very talented. I want to see more technique at the point of attack. Um, for Zeke Berry, he's a very good technique player as far as, being a DB, and his instincts on the ball are very good. I want to see him have some better form tackling, because in that first drive, when he missed that tackle on Vinny Anthony, that looked pretty bad for a third year starting DB for Michigan. Also, and you know what? I got to say this, they're teaching a lot of the linebackers and DBs and just all the college athletes in general this kind of rugby technique when they tackle. And I think, the NCAA and all of the coaching associations, when they teach this technique, they're doing it for safety reasons so they can prevent crowning and they could prevent all these other types of things. But it's creating real poor fundamentals for the players. They're not bringing their feet, they're lunging at players, and those are ways that you're going to get hurt. Honestly, if you're lunging, but if you're under that squat rack and you're getting that lower body developed the way you're supposed to, and you bring your legs to the tackle and you run through the man with your legs rather than reaching with arms, then you're going to have a better chance of not having as many poor tackling fundamentals. So just got to say that. So I just want our corners to have better tackling fundamentals and better corner fundamentals at the point of attack when the ball's in the air. Um, all correctable. 3 drops by our wide receivers, that continues. I want to see that increase in a big freaking way. It's much better than it was now that you have McCulley and Marsh involved. The offense looks a lot better, along with Marlon Klein. And don't get me wrong, all of these things are under the bad aspect of what we're talking about with the Michigan uh, Wisconsin game, and the outcomes yesterday are all correctable issues. Okay, so again, that's the bad. Now the ugly. The ugly, I think, is all in like the planning. Um, there were no, taunting penalties this week. I don't see any major coaching boo boos. I think that was a intentional, you know, plan of Coach Moore. And the ugly of it all is that we continue to go another week without flipping the field based on our kick return and our punt return. We have got to be more dynamic for a team that runs the ball the way we do, for a team that methodically moves the ball the way Michigan does. We have to be more methodic, we have to be able to flip the field when we are on the field and give teams a lot more problems because they have to face a dynamic Michigan rushing attack on a short field. Now, good for us is that we have a defense that gets lots and lots of turnovers. I like to see us create more fumbles, but we get plenty of interceptions and plenty sacks. So we have the opportunity to flip the field on defense. We can't always depend on it. And it's 3 phases of football, not 2, 3. And we need to play like that. I know they want to legislate a lot of the third phase in and out of the game, and it's different, you know, modalities where it's not as significant as it used to be. But for a blue blood like Michigan who loves to be a traditionalist and an anti, spread them out and, rainbow lollipop the football all over the field, we need to be able to flip field position with kick return and punt return. And that remains to be an ugly part of the Michigan game. And that should improve as we move into bigger and better competition. It won't be good enough just to fair catch it or let it drop and let it roll to the one. We're going to have to be brave enough to field that ball, put a little shake shimmy on, one step cut and get up the field and make something happen. And who knows, you might be able to open things up and bust a long one out. Who knows? Pause. So, So we got to be more dynamic and flip the field. That's the only part of our game that I think right now is just downright ugly, is that we just don't get enough out of our kick return and our punt return game to be more dynamic. Now, the good, plenty, 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 like my grandmother used to say, plenty, plenty good on the side of the Michigan Wolverines. Justice Haynes, deuce, deuce, on the loose, rips another. This is his fifth 100-yard game with a TD scored, and he is a Heisman contender. I don't care if they're going to say it, I'm going to say it. And he's guaranteed to rip a long run once every game. It didn't matter what defense we were playing. New Mexico, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Wisconsin, doesn't matter. All blue bloods, he ripped them all. So, continue to feed that man, continue to be the prolific offense that we are running the ball. I think if you want to do 3 yards in a cloud of dust, he's better in the fourth quarter with the more carries you give him. The second point of the good would be Bryce's poise as a developing quarterback. Super turnover-free quarterback with a lot of poise for a freshman phenom. Love that. Love the way Chip Lindsey is helping him approach the game by using his best tools and not letting the tools get ahead of him, and designing things that, accentuate his better qualities as a five-star player, as a five-star freshman phenom that he is. Another good, Michigan found their bona fide number one receiver and Donovan McCulley. You know what I mean? And it looks like Marsh is slowly grabbing hold of that number two spot. You know what I mean? So we got our X and we got our, we have our X and our wide receiver. So, now we just have to fill in the blanks with tight end and slot. So, and of course, Donovan McCulley had 117 yards and a touchdown on being physical. Now, I don't know if you guys can go back and look at that particular play. He actually caught the ball and created the contact with the safety and bounced off the contact to sprint for another maybe 12, 15 yards for a Michigan touchdown. Man, and then, Marsh caught the back shoulder for about 20, 30 yards in the second half. And Michigan just moved the ball, engineered a really nice drive, methodically doing their thing, moving up and down the field. Also, one thing that a lot of people aren't talking about from a national perspective is the impact of the Michigan safeties. Now, the Michigan safeties is looking like a really special group, along with our front seven. Our defense is looking like a real special group right now. It's not too many teams that scored over 13 points on us. And, I think every one of our safeties has a pick already this year. And then you got the hitman coming up, smacking people. Like I said, he smacked Dupree on that force fill. And then you had Rob Moore, the closer, I call him. He's like Mariano Rivera, used to be on the Yankees. You bring him in to get that pick and close out a game. Like, get off my field type of interception. And that's exactly what he did to Wisconsin in the fourth quarter. They threw that deep pass to Vinny Anthony. Rob Moore scrapes, gets the pick. And Metcalf is like kind of like our utility dude. He does a little bit of everything. He can play safety. He can play that nickel, that nickel viper position that we have on the team. And then Jana Mangum is just a really solid, rangy, quarters, roll coverage, cover two type of player with he can make up a lot of ground because he has a lot of good instincts. He knows how to follow the ball. And these safeties are going to give a lot of Big Ten teams nightmares for the rest of the season. I don't know how you feel. You can chime in if you want. You can leave a comment. I don't know how you feel about Michigan safeties. I think Michigan safeties have a really dynamic room. And if the defensive coordinator uses the safeties properly, I think we could give a lot of teams fits with the way that we're disguising our coverages, the way that we're bracketing receivers going up the field, and we can slowly, move ourselves into creating a lot of sudden changes and turnovers for a lot of different teams that we're playing throughout the rest of the season. And of course, once again, yeah, I talked about the hitman, Brandon Hillman, and now he put the boom on Dupree. I love that play. That reminds me a lot of Mikey Sanders still, and how he used to come down and lay the wood. You know what I mean? And of course, the D line is always going to be a problem. Not a whole lot of sacks this game, but a lot of pressures. And of course, you got Derek Moore coming in, gangbusters with Rajon Benny, and causing that sack late in the fourth quarter to seal the game. And Derek Moore, he always gets better as the season rolls along. And of course, the linebackers are just a straight punch in the mouth, man. Ernest Hausman, I call him the Hammer because I always like the way he comes up and puts the boom on a player. Jimmy Rolder is like a body blow. So if Ernest Hausman is the hook, Rolder is the body blow. Cole Sullivan, the rangy second year player, is the uppercut. And Michigan again, in the good side of the game, Michigan again proves their physical brand of ball is turning out to be the best in the country. And I think that, because they're battle tested against teams like Oklahoma, Nebraska, and now Wisconsin, they're going to come through and show people a physical brand of football that I don't think a lot of teams are ready for. Why? Because a lot of teams like to spread them out. And they practice spreading them out. And they spend a lot of time catering practice to their offenses that spread it out. So they don't get the time to be as physical in the box as they would like to be. And then you go up against a team like Michigan and you run in a 30 front, so some sort of hybrid 50 front, and then Michigan is just going to climb to the second level and roll on you, you know what I mean? And lean on you all game until you just say uncle. So the corrections that Michigan has to do are all correctable problems. We got young tackles that need shoring up. We got to make sure our DBs play better technique in tackling and at the point of attack and pass coverage. But with a great safety room, sometimes you can cover up corners that are not super, super tight with great safety play. And also the drops by the wide receivers, I think, will be mitigated because now you found your number one and your number two and your reliable tight end. And you can get your running backs in the mix in the passing game. And then I think that gives a dynamic running quarterback like Bryce a lot to do and a lot to think about and a lot to, let go of the ball. And I think there is something to Joel Klatt's, thought about Bryce, not just being a thrower, but being a passer and developing into that and learning how to take a little bit off the ball, put some heat on the ball when you need to, all those sorts of things. I've seen his body language improved a lot as he rolls out. As he rolls out and takes away half the field so he throws less interceptions, I've seen him settle his body more, stick a foot in the ground and deliver that ball. Or throw a nice sidearm, which he is talented enough to do to get that done. Lastly, no crapnalysis, just analysis. No crapnalysis, just getting after this with real football information. So this section is about all of the CBS, NBC, ESPN, Fox, and all the talking social media bobbleheads that always crown teams and crown players, regardless of the X's and O's and what teams are really representing. So there's this crazy rumor or this crazy innuendo going around about Sharon Moore locking up Bryce Underwood because he's young and he just wants to be a smash mouth coach. Yeah, he wants to be a smash mouth coach, of course. And if you have that in your tool bag, why not use it? But Bryce is part of that smash mouth now. People have to understand that. And also, that's the job of a coach, is to reel a player in and provide discipline. You know what I mean? As your young phenom quarterback develops and as your offense transforms from being super smash mouth and a boa constrictor type of offense to being more balanced, to being more, you know, pass, run, kind of proportional, right? So, and Michigan may not ever throw for 400 yards, but at least they'll be balanced and they'll be the antithesis to a lot of teams out there that just want to throw the ball all over the yard. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with a couple of teams within the sport holding that sort of methodology down. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a team or two having that in the tool belt. And if they want to strangle out a game, they can do it. And the other crap analysis is all these pundits believe in Michigan and believe in Bryce now. Okay, so, Michigan has a pretty good record, only one loss. No one thought that was going to be the case because we have a freshman quarterback. Everyone was discounting the impact of the defense that was bringing 80% of its players back from last year. And you see what Michigan is turning into and what Penn State is not. And I've always been of the concerted thought that Penn State was who we thought they was. If you're a real football person and you really watch Penn State over the last 2 or 3 years, they've been always a day late and a dollar short. Always been a day late and a dollar short as a football team. They like the Cowboys. They get predicted every year, and they always come up a day late and a dollar short. And I think the brother James Franklin is a good coach. I just think, I don't know. He may have to move on and go to another school that offers a little more talent based, and maybe he should have recruited a better type of quarterback because I don't know if Drew Law is the one that's meant for them to get over the hump with. We'll see what they continue to do, but getting beat by a really bad UCLA team, yeesh, yeesh, yeesh. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Also, and because Penn State was predicted to be a playoff team, and they're not what everybody thought they were, that provides Michigan with an opportunity to climb into the playoffs with everything still ahead of them, especially this big time game next week that's going to be on prime time versus USC. USC's defense is boo boo, but their offense is really explosive. So it'll be strength on strength next week, next Saturday night. Um, and the team you love to hate, the Michigan Wolverines, are right there with all their goals still available for them in the season. That means winning the Big Ten and winning and getting into the playoffs and doing their thing. So I'm not a Debbie Downer, as a lot of people are, about Michigan and what they put up. And everybody thought Michigan should have blown out Wisconsin. And based on the numbers, we probably should have. But that's not the way football works. Some team can present muddy rock fight type of games and try to bring you down to their level of play. Now, fortunately, Michigan saw this first half and said, okay, we need to be a little more methodical. We need to provide more of a pressure scheme on defense. And in the second half, lights out on defense. And Michigan found a passing game that allowed them to move the ball up and down the field the way they wanted to. Even when Jordan Marshall got into the game, you saw the fight was kind of out of Wisconsin by that point. I don't know. If I was Michigan, I might have locked up and let, Jordan Marshall run one in because he was right there on the goal line. I might have locked up and let him run it in, just to give him a little sense of, a little attaboy, a little pat on the back, nothing wrong with that. And then, of course, it would have been 35-10, not 35-10, it would have been 30-10, 31, somewhere in there. And it wouldn't have looked like Wisconsin was putting up such a fight throughout the game. But I'm gonna get out of here, man. That was the recap for the game. That was I didn't even do the I told you so. So the I told you so part of the game, right, was basically I was scouting Wisconsin on all 22. I was telling everybody that their O-line had some big deficiencies in it. And then, of course, second half, you saw that play out. I was also talking about They also played a game above their heads a little bit. The output that they gave in this game is not indicative of what they did during the season. They tried to carry a Road Warriors mantle in this game, and Michigan almost fell for it. Michigan almost fell for the okie doke, but glad they came back, came to their senses, reevaluated, and did some great things in the second half. So that's going to be it for our recap of the Michigan-Wisconsin game, 24-10. No Crapnalysis, just getting after this real hardcore football information. See y'all on Friday for the pregame of USC versus Michigan. Peace and go blue.